Buddy, Mike, and Price. We're going to have Derek joining us, I think, in a little bit here with America's New Clothes. We are fired up. Hope you guys are too. We are a week out from the election, and the media has gone into an all-out game of whack-a-mole to try to keep the truth from getting out there. So we're going to talk a little bit about free speech, and then we're going to have Price give us a little bit of update on some of these poll numbers in the swing states. So first off, let me just say, and I know there's reasons, minor indiscretions factor into this to some degree, but we've been noticing that a lot of websites are being blocked from even being able to be sent. If some of those websites might have imagery that could be very incriminating for the former vice president's son. We're noticing that certain websites, as in golftangovictor.org, if you know what I'm talking about, you cannot even send on Facebook Messenger. You cannot even send over iMessage. So,
and people who are posting the link on Twitter are having their accounts blocked for up to 12 hours.
Right. Yeah, right. So not even not allowing you to send it, but even keeping you out of the political conversation here for a week. So I don't care what your stripes are politically, but you have got to be fired up that this is nonsense. I mean, this is a complete infringement of our First Amendment. People have a right to see things for themselves and decide for themselves what the truth is. And so this level of assault that we're seeing, you know, all the QAnon hashtags taken down off of Twitter, there is an absolute fever pitch of trying to limit the amount of information the American public gets. And I just think it does everybody a disservice. Wouldn't you say, Price? I mean, we can't be in a process here where, you know, the media muscle gets to craft a narrative for all these years. And when the truth comes out, they simply won't let anybody else posit any theories.
Well, fundamentally, I think it's what's most important is if this information does turn out to be true, which in a lot of cases it seems like it is, then giving the public the ability to comment on it, share it, and make their own opinions on it is important. Because if you don't allow that, then you're limiting discourse. And then, as we've talked about on this show in the past, are you a platform? Are you a publisher? Which one are you? Are you deciding that you're going to be editorial and what content you're going to allow on your site?
Right.
Okay, then you're a news publisher.
Right.
Are you a platform where people can share their ideas, or where people can go out and have a conversation with each other, debate these ideas, go through the data, and actually try to understand what's going on with this content that's coming out? Then you're a platform. But I think these social media companies are finally, and you're seeing this now with Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg being called up to testify before Congress in regards to the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, that you have to have accountability. These companies have to draw a line in the sand and finally decide, are we going to be editorial in our decision-making processes, or are we going to allow our users to identify with the kinds of materials they want to examine and investigate and allow them to make decisions for themselves?
Right. And I don't necessarily think that a complete free-for-all necessarily devolves into the kind of junk that we were getting when this 230 was put in place. I mean, the origins of Section 230 were related to Prodigy before it was bought by America Online.
And so
for its user-generated content, right?
And so for a layman who might be listening, what is Project 230? What is it?
Section 230 basically says
Section 230, pardon me.
It limits the liability of a company who has user-generated content, right? So UGC, user-generated content. If I'm just establishing a platform for this content, then I cannot be liable for, you know, bullying threats, or I'm coming to kill you, whatever is said through that medium. So as a result of the Prodigy incident, Section 230 was put in place so that these companies would not be liable for the things that happen on their platform because they're simply transferring. But part of doing that is that they couldn't have editorial control. They're basically saying, look, we're not running editorial control over the content that's exchanged on this platform, and therefore we can't be liable. So to take that liability, to take that reduction of liability away, right? Now, the only way to do that is to say, oh, okay, well, if you are responsible for the content on your platform and you're doing something editorially or algorithmically, well, then clearly you have to be liable for cases where things go wrong or somebody's threatened or someone's killed. You can't have it both ways. So choose which way. So I think with AI algorithms, we're now at a place where you can get, letting Derek join us here. I think we're now at a place where you can use AI algorithms and reduce spam and identify bullying and take action there. But that should be the extent of the platform's involvement. The next problem they get to is the problem you had day zero with Twitter, which is if you don't curate the content that's coming through people's Twitter feeds, right, and coming into my feed and what I'm seeing, if you aren't to curate that, you follow 2,000 people and they're tweeting ferociously, you're going to get such a stream of knowledge. You'll never make it through your news feed, right? You'll open up Twitter and you'll be, deep 7 days back and you'll never get up to the top because it's like drinking from a fire hose. So they get to say algorithmically, they're crafting our feeds in ways that are curating content that we actually want to see in our feed. But in doing so, they have to have some sort of algorithm that says what we're interested in. And because they're getting involved in an algorithm, now that algorithm could be suited to the tastes of their politics, right?
I think that we're talking about a fundamental difference, though, because curating content and creating political silos, yeah, that's a problem in the social media landscape. But curating content is a lot different than cutting content and then banning users for sharing content. I mean, those two things are fundamentally different. And that's why I think what you're seeing right now with Twitter and Facebook going forward and trying to block and scrub these Hunter Biden posts from the internet is not curation. It's literally trying to just dismantle any dissemination of information that goes against a political narrative that they disagree with as a platform.
Right. Like I don't believe that Jack Dorsey made the call to limit the New York Post article. I think that the processes which are in place at Twitter and Facebook, the actual writing, the actual terms of service and those agreements are written in such a way that the social media companies still could do the right thing. However, all the people, Silicon Valley is a monoculture. So the folks that work there, the millennial that's there and actually dealing with some of this, the algorithmic kind of actions they're taking on content. Most of the folks that work at Twitter and Facebook and Google lean so far left that they can't really divorce what they're supposed to be doing to protect users on a day-to-day basis with their own attempting to protect the American public from the dangerous threat of Donald Trump, right? So they're not able to make that distinction. And so in action, I don't know the degree to which they're disciplining these folks, but you don't have anybody who's acting in those interests. And some of the whistleblowers that came out with Veritas, remember the guy about a year ago who came out with the Google blacklist? He was super forthright saying, look, we're adding things to this blacklist all the time. We're constantly in this mode. And I think that's just, go read Lord of the Flies. You have a very mob mentality where everybody's going, yeah, we have to stop that. And to the point, I think, on my personal Facebook page, when this plot against the president that we did the podcast on Sunday night, we have people who are just outright dismissing the veracity of that film and off nothing. They're probably not even watching it. And they're just saying, look, you guys are spewing fake news. So not only are we having the actual people within the companies policing, but they have people flagging a post like that on my personal feed that says, hey, go out and watch this plot against the president movie. And they're going through and saying, nope, I'm flagging this as false information, even though I could engage in a dialogue with you and understand you a little better. I'm deciding that I'm reporting you to the authorities. We don't need the Gestapo. We've got your most liberal friend on Facebook.
Well, let me ask you this too, and this kind of goes into the 30,000-foot question: is do you think the Hunter Biden narrative is working to dissuade voters from voting for Joe Biden? Fundamentally,
I don't think the drugs are.
And that's for both of you.
I don't think the drugs are. I don't think the prostitution is. I think the underage stuff might be. But the main thing is the actual documents that are being released, such as the document that the guys over at America's Voice released this morning, showing that, they were going to get Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook involved in this China deal with Rosemont Seneca. Now you're in a place where, okay, how many people were on the payroll of the CCCP? And how many of those people are and the Hunter stuff, it's your own personal business unless there's something that's so egregious that can be used as blackmail. And then you and your father really are in the pocket of the CCP. That's my understanding.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Derek.
No, I was going to say my take on it is I agree with Mike. I don't think that the people they're not interested in the drugs and that kind of thing. I think it's going to go more to, in the last debate, as Joe Biden said, this integrity and character is on the ballot this election. And now if all of a sudden the breaking reports and breaking news are, well, dude, you're now we're calling into question your integrity and character now going back 30 years.
Right.
And if you've been in bed with China and in bed, now getting in bed with Ukraine and Russia, and when Putin, comes out and says, Joe Biden did quite well in Ukraine. So he basically said that Trump is wrong, that Joe Biden did well. So now you have Putin speaking out on his behalf. So if we went crazy that, Putin says something nice about Trump, he must be in the pocket of Donald Trump or in Putin. Now, okay, is Joe Biden then in the pocket of Putin? If that's the case, was he in the pocket of Poroshenko? If that's the case, is he in the pocket of Xi?
Right.
So I think those are the things that are going to change people's minds. I mean, from what I'm seeing, some people are saying that the independents are starting to break heavily to Trump in some key battleground states. I don't think that would have happened per se if it wasn't for people saying, wait a minute, what's going on? We won't get the full story if Biden wins. So was he selling out America? So, I mean, obviously it remains to be seen, but I think that those are that line and that specific theme is what's going to be the most impactful here for the next week.
And like I said, the only reason I bring up the question is my biggest concern is that you will have a lot of particularly middle-aged and older voters, especially working voters, who will get lost in the weeds on this issue because it is such a complex topic, and you start going down the rabbit hole of looking at the papers that are coming out, looking at the emails that are coming out. A lot of voters, it's not that easy, tangible. Why should I go for this? Why am I against it? You really have to do the research on it, and you look at the minutia behind all the information that's coming out in order to get a firm grasp of what's actually going on, versus where the campaign could be prioritizing their time towards just direct attacks towards Joe Biden.
Well, and the great thing is the campaign is directing their attacks toward Joe Biden, right? Trump in the campaign is letting the Posobics and the Bonginos and all of them run the narrative and the Stephen Bannons. But, if you think back to, 2016, a lot of pollsters will say, it was within 1% to 2% margin of error. So, we're not shocked that Trump won. At the same time, what they're saying is that because Comey got involved late in the game, that it kept those independents who may have been on the fence leaning Hillary to say, wait a minute, some email thing may blow up, and now I'm voting for a president that may be impeached or may have some major issue come up just after the election. So they broke to Trump. The same thing could be happening now. So I do believe that it is going to have an impact with that middle-aged voter who truly does care more about character. I mean, Mike and I have talked before, and I'm sure, Mike, you see it on the road, that most of middle America, when I say middle America, I don't mean middle of America, but actually the middle thinkers of America, those people who are 10% to the left, 10% to the right, who sometimes will vote for a Democrat as a Republican or vote for a Republican as a Democrat. Those people do care about their neighbor. They do care that their neighbor is trustworthy and that they buy into this, being a community. And if now calling into question is Joe Biden, and they're running from answering it. They're not saying none of this is true. Look, if my father was running for president and I was being blamed for this, all this stuff was coming out, and I wasn't a meth head, I wasn't selling out America, you would see me on every TV channel I can get on saying, guys, this is a flat out lie. None of this stuff happened. He's not doing that. So I do think that leads people to believe if you're not coming out and protesting against it as your father's running for the greatest seat in the world, something else is going on. So there's got to be truth to it.
Right. Well, Bobulinski proves he's got the other half of the email.
Right.
It's not like this laptop was fabricated with all these Rosemont Seneca deals on them.
Right.
With all the stuff about the funding. And then with the recipient of Tony Bobulinski on the other side, who has the matching email. I mean, that's I'm sorry, but that's evidence. That's sufficient evidence to say that the veracity of this laptop is real. And now the next step is to say it's real. Does it show that there was some amount of selling out of the USA? Does it show that there are
which I think you can make the case it does based on the emails that have come out
for sure.
Between Hunter Biden and his associates talking about, kick 10 up to the big guy. I mean, fundamentally, it's damning. It's a damning piece of content. And unfortunately, I mean, I think you guys have covered this too. Most of the mainstream media is not covering it in a lot of cases. And when you try to share it on social media, the conversation we're having right now, it gets banned.
Right.
So coming up with creative ways that can allow this information to be disseminated into the larger public. So you're not just stuck in, like I said, these ideological echo chambers that trap these groups in and really make it difficult for them to disseminate their information outside of it. It's a struggle. And I don't know if we have enough time a week away from Election Day to really hit as many people as it would need to hit in order for it to be effective.
Right.
And what venue are they going to hear about it in?
Well,
I mean, Trump was soft in alluding to it. Well, looks, you're like you have the luxury of being in your basement. Must have been making some money somewhere, and somebody has to go and, oh, that's curious. I wonder if there is some grift. I mean, Jake Tapper's not covering it. Rachel Maddow's not covering it. None of these guys on NBC News are covering it. Yeah. Where are they going to find this information? And when it does happen to seep into the social media channels, they see a bunch of other leftists go there and clobber somebody like me over the head and say, "Oh, this is nonsense. This is fake news." Where are they going to hear it? It's like, they're plugging their ears and they're just trying to run out the clock. This is too big of a decision to run out the clock.
Right. Yeah, and I do believe that with Tucker, I think having Bobulinski on his show today
for the whole show.
I'm actually hoping he's recording it right now because I wouldn't be shocked if for some reason Tony doesn't get picked up by some unmarked vehicle, right? It's like, sorry, you're under arrest for, you're the one that's implicated in the money laundering. So now you're under arrest, right? So hopefully he's making all that happen right now and can get it out. But I do think if he's got 5 million viewers, it's going to go wild on social media afterwards. So how are they going to contain that? Are they going to shut Tucker's whole site down? Right. But then people will record it with their phones, right, and put it out on their sites and go to everybody. So it's going to be hard for them to keep ignoring the story.
10 days of darkness. Is this a 10-day blackout?
Yeah. Yeah. Because 10 days from the last one, 10 days would be on Tuesday. And so yeah.
That kind of moves forward into our second topic, though, for this segment. And it is 7 days to Election Day. We're 1 week out. And the polling is still all over the place. If you look at the general direction of a lot of the polling, especially in key battleground states, it seems to be edging up for Trump and going down for Biden.
Right.
Obviously, take every poll with a grain of salt. I mean, 2016 is a prime example. In 2018 is a prime example of why you don't put all your faith in the polls. They're more of a guiding star for general trends among the electorate. But if you go down, I prefer to use Real Clear Politics. It's a poll aggregator. If you look at their polls that they have going out in Florida, it has a 0.4% lead for Trump, which is an increase. If you look at October 24th, this is the polls that came out today. If you look at October 24th, they had Trump at 47% on average and Biden at 49%. Trump has just been ticking up about a percentage point every single day, or half a percentage point every single day since then to the 27th, which brings us to today. If you go over to Wisconsin, you can see Biden is trending down a little bit, but he's still sitting fairly comfortable at a 5.5 point lead. If you go over to Michigan, you have Biden. I personally don't think Trump is, unless there's some major error in the polling, Biden's sitting at almost a 10 point lead.
In Michigan.
in Michigan. Yeah. I mean, the Trump victory in Michigan in 2016 was a bit of an aberration. No one expected it, and it was an upsetting vote for a lot of people. And with the outpours of high turnout that you're seeing across the country right now, I think that the expectation of the Midwest being that red block like it was in 2016 should be tempered just a little bit.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you see the Iron Range, the mayors of the Iron Range coming out and supporting Trump, which is very positive. But if you look at a lot of the polls and where they're polling and kind of where they're sampling from, there's a lot of these kind of that, to your point, Derek, the that middle-aged suburban family who, in a lot of cases, just want a quote unquote, what the Democrats love to say, return to normal.
Right.
They don't want the hysteria of the Trump administration. They don't want the theatrics of the Trump administration.
Right.
In their mind. And that's why they're saying, you know what? I may not like Biden, but I'm going to settle for Biden, which is a hashtag that's been going around on social media for the past few months. They're settling for Biden. Yeah.
Nothing like selling it, but settle.
Mm-hmm. Nothing like selling it, was settle for Biden. But so I would say the Midwest is going to be a toss-up going into Election Day, but I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. What do you think?
Go ahead, Derek.
Well, I Top Trade Guru, they follow all the stuff coming in, all the ballots that have coming in so far. So their release this morning was Republicans now lead in Michigan in number of ballots returned. So, and it's 41%, 39%, and there's about 50% have returned their ballots. So if he's, and just to make the point overall, right, what was the push this year from the Democrats? Vote early, get your mail-in ballots and get them in early. So if they're starting to top out now, which is what we're seeing in Florida, for example, if they're starting to top out now and the remainder of those people, because independents do really wait until after the last debate, because again, they want to take in everything before they make their decision. So if now you're relying upon independents and a large swath of Republicans who will now start to be going to vote. I mean, in Florida, I think early voting just opened on Saturday, or at least in the whole state. I think it may have been open, in a couple counties or several counties before. But from one guy I follow, he's actually leading in Miami-Dade County now and Palm County. If he's winning Miami-Dade, Florida, I mean, he hadn't gotten to Tampa yet.
I mean, fundamentally, I think that the idea that Florida is a swing state anymore is a little bit naive. If you look at the makeup of the electorate, I mean, they have a supermajority in the House and the Senate and the State House and a Republican governor. So I think that you definitely, in terms of looking at Florida, I think they generally lean red on most issues, most cases over the past few elections. I'm interested to learn more about that Michigan number though, because if that is true, that Republicans are beating out Democrats in mail-in voting, that's huge. Yeah, because
no, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Bryce.
I was just going to say, I mean, fundamentally, to your point, the Democrats were relying on vote early, get as many mail-in ballots in as possible, and then they were hoping that there would be they can kind of build up that cushion so that on election day, if voter turnout isn't good, Republicans are expected to vote in higher numbers on election day.
Right, exactly. And they always do. So, for instance, the same guy about Florida shows going into election day, Hillary Clinton was up 88,000 votes. She lost by 113,000, I think, right? So what this guy is saying now is that for Republicans to just get back to that number, for example, which he thinks they'll be there by Saturday, based on how they're clipping off the number of actual in-person voting, the Democrats are running out of people, is that he may win Florida by 300,000 votes if the current pace stays up. But again, going back to Michigan, 2,147,000, call it 300 ballots have been cast so far. And if Republicans are up 41-39, now again, that's not to say that every Republican is voting for Trump, but the 39% Democrats, it's also to say not every Democrat's voting for Biden either. Right. So
I think there's more breaking Democrats for Trump than Trump for Biden.
Correct.
I would agree.
And the current ballot so far, he says, or this person shows, this is the source is NBC News that he uses, but is up 226% from 2018. The interesting thing that's coming back in all these states, Michigan, they have a article on their website today about the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor. There literally is no young people voting. I mean, the what they were expecting of just being overwhelmed with all this youth vote, they're not
Right.
seeing it. So now it comes, are the youth vote was it not going to materialize this year? Which I'd seen a couple people 2 months ago say it wasn't going to materialize and Democrats have to have that vote.
Yeah.
So if it's not materializing, then is just it being flat a net sum game for both, or is it a positive for Trump?
Well, an interesting kind of a subgroup of Americans that I've noticed, and I've seen this article in a few different places, from here in California to over in Texas, is Biden is not polling particularly well with the Latino base.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's a huge base, especially in a place like Florida,
Right.
California, Texas. I mean, those groups it's millions and millions and millions of people who are voters.
Right.
And if Biden is not polling well with them, if you don't get the youth vote and you don't get the Latino vote, really you're relying on the old school Democratic vote and the black vote. I mean, those two votes are your only base that you have left. If Latinos aren't siding with you, and even if the Republicans are able to break off a third of the Latino vote, like they were able to do in 2016, then that puts them in a very advantageous position to win.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, the other thing about Michigan that I was curious about is, with all the riots, you had the sheriff of Michigan have a very, strike it down early kind of attitude about any of these, the BLM riots that started in June.
Right.
And I'm wondering if any of that played in to the just general sentiment in Michigan. You have a very heavy-handed governor. You have a heavy-handed governor that's in favor of complete lockdown. They could be having the same kind of pushback that we're having here in California as a result of that. And then just seeing the way, even though Detroit, obviously very Democratic city, but they had a law enforcement tactic that was not representative of what other liberal cities around the country did.
Right.
Maybe there was an awakening as a result of that. People said, wow, this guy puts law and order as a high priority.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it could be. I mean, I was shocked that Michigan went for Trump in 2016. So knowing that he won it by like 0.3 or something, I mean, it wasn't a wide margin.
It was around 15 to 20,000 votes.
Yeah.
And a few counties all over the state is what did it for Trump.
And Northern Michigan will definitely go for Trump. Right. So it really is Detroit and the suburbs, and that's really Ann Arbor. And so again, maybe the Ann Arbor vote, maybe a lot of kids stayed home this year and they're doing the virtual school. Right. So maybe they're in Lansing or in, Bloomfield Hills.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe that's where they'll vote. And that youth vote will turn out. But looking across the board for youth vote from the groups I follow, youth vote is pretty much down across the board. I think in North Carolina it's up, but in Pennsylvania, Florida, Michigan, and Wisconsin, it's down. Because they were expecting a huge youth vote in Madison, Wisconsin. And they have not gotten it.
Well, and the GOP for North Carolina is working hard for voter turnout. I have a few friends who are involved in a few races over in North Carolina right now, and they said that the resources that the Republican Party is putting towards making sure that there's good voter turnout on Election Day and ensuring that there's good mail-in voting numbers on up until Election Day. I mean, they're pouring tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars from the Republican Party's coffers into ensuring that on Election Day there are Republicans out voting.
Yeah.
And this is anecdotal. Moving over to Pennsylvania, I was just in Pennsylvania about a week and a half ago, doing an event out there and flying into Philadelphia, which is a traditionally Democratic city.
Sure.
Going directly out into the suburbs. I mean, I was astonished by the number of Trump sides directly in the traditionally blue collar neighborhoods surrounding Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Right.
Which, once again, it's completely anecdotal, but I was surprised because these areas traditionally have not voted Republican in decades.
Right.
And you're seeing Trump support.
Yeah, and I don't think the violence last night is going to help the Biden cause at all as well. And so
no, I think you're right. I think the fact that people are more empowered. If nobody who voted for Trump, aside from these people who tell these stories of, I was a Trump voter and now I'm for sure voting for Biden. I think those are all made up. I think that most people have confirmation bias on what their choice was, and so somebody in Pennsylvania, somebody in Michigan who voted for Trump in 2016, I think likely they're going to see promises made, promises kept. They're going to vote for him again. And
Right.
also the fact that more people feel empowered enough to wear their MAGA hats and to hang out their Trump banners. I think that tells more people it's okay. You know, it might also suppress some of the silent majority. You know, you might have fewer people who are super quiet in the polls about the fact that they're going to vote for Trump, and then they actually do.
Right.
So, you know, you have to take that new enthusiasm for Trump in both ways. But we have to assume that the signs, as Price and I discovered during my campaign, in which we did not have any signs.
That was your mistake right there.
Signs matter, and so flags matter, and so
right.
You know, this outpouring of support matters as much as people bellyache on the left. Oh, I can't believe I got stuck behind a Blue Lives Matter truck or a guy flying.
No, it shows energy.
Yeah, it shows energy, and look, you cannot deny that the enthusiasm is on our side. I mean, he's going rally after rally with tens of thousands of people, and Biden can't even get 100 people to these things to show.
Yeah, well, Trump's doing what, 3 rallies a day till election day?
Yeah,
this whole week.
Yeah.
I mean, filling stadiums.
Yeah,
right. And Obama can't even get. I mean, he can't get more than 200 people at a rally, and they're all in cars. So we're just guesstimating how many people he's got, right? I mean, I just say, all right, they got 100 cars. They're averaging 2 people per car. You got a couple hundred people there. I mean, you're seeing more Trump supporters showing up at the rallies for Biden, on the Caravan Inn or whatnot. I mean, he's calling them chumps in Pennsylvania because they're making so much noise outside. So, going back to the polling on like North Carolina, for example, Trafalgar Group is the one, is one of the main ones I follow. Trafalgar was the most accurate on the battleground states in 2016. They've got now. Go ahead.
Oh no, I prefer personally Rasmussen.
Okay.
But yeah, Trafalgar. I mean, those two are like the two that I go at when it comes to looking at polls.
And Rasmussen was the most accurate on the national polling for 2016. Trafalgar was the most accurate on the battlegrounds, and so they've got now Trump up 2.8% in North Carolina, and this was as of the 25th. In the Senate poll, he's now got Tillis up as of yesterday, up 2.2 or 1.8%. In Wisconsin, he's still got Biden up, but it's narrowing. It's only at 1.3 now. And you've seen a shift in all of those polls. So he's been seeing a very quiet shift to Trump. And he released one today. I can't find it right now on Twitter, but he had released one today on Pennsylvania showing that Trump now has a 0.6% lead in Pennsylvania. So I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see here in the last week, again, how these rallies, right, and enthusiasm. And, I was telling a friend of mine this morning, this one kind of reminds me of '88 with Bush and Dukakis, right? Dukakis was up 10 points a week out. Their final debate, everybody shifted and all the independents broke for Bush. You could be seeing, especially with I'm going to end fracking, I'm going to end oil. That could be the breaking of the Biden campaign, and putting a lid on everything with Hunter Biden stories breaking, stories about him breaking, that he's in bed with Russia and China and everybody else. You could see a large swing moving back, especially when you're seeing on social media the largest Google search, right, which broke their system, right? It went off the chart, was can I change my vote? Right? If people are looking to change their vote, I don't believe, I mean, they could, but I don't believe the vast majority of them by any way, stretch your imagination, is looking to change their vote from Trump to Biden.
Right.
Right. Because it just started trending literally at the very end of Thursday night's debate.
Well, also, I mean, the next, major decision point on the horizon that could be in a lot of voters' minds is, I mean, you have members of the Democratic Party now coming out and saying they're in favor of court packing.
Right.
Yeah. With the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett. So, I mean, the idea that you're going to fundamentally change the third branch of government, the judiciary in the United States, by packing the courts could leave a negative taste in a lot of potentially, middle road voters' minds who haven't voted yet.
Right.
I mean, we don't want to. America is not a radical country.
Correct.
We are a land of moderation.
Right.
And so when you have radicalism on one side or the other coming in and saying we want to redevelop, redesign, and rebuild the system from scratch, that's not something that a lot of Americans resonate with, because one of our fundamental tenets as a country has been stability. and we want stability moving forward. I mean, the
Yeah.
economy is never good when it's the political system's not stable. The state of the world's never good when the United States isn't stable. So stability being one of our national cornerstones is something that I think a lot of voters take into mind when they're casting their ballot on election day.
Yeah, and I think that middle of the road person who may just have a strong dislike for Trump and his words, right, and just how he carries himself.
Yeah.
Then we'll look at, all right, if I give the Senate, if I give the White House to Biden, and I give the Senate to the Democrats as well, and assuming that Pelosi stays in power, do I really want to radically transform America as Obama claimed he was going to do in 2008? I agree with you. I think that there's the majority of people who are saying, I don't want craziness. And yes, I understand that the Trump administration has been crazy and it's tiresome, right? Which was the point of the Democrats. If you look at as soon as he won, they were like, we are going to exhaust everybody, get the media in our camp and exhaust everybody into just mental wear down where I just cannot take one more second of this guy. Now I think that's backfired on them because now they're seeing the radical approach of, now I understand why you hate him so much. It's not because of what he's doing for me and that's good for me. It's what he's doing to ruin your party. And he is basically stepping on you guys and what you were trying to build. And, we can do a whole other show on the Belt and Road Initiative in China and the Great Reset that's coming and all this other stuff, because that's what liberals want. The progressives want a tearing down of any capitalism anywhere on the planet, and they want to introduce this global communism. And I mean, Time Magazine is going to do an entire issue on the global reset by the World Economic Forum. This is not a conspiracy. This is documented. It's out. And if you start tying everything together that we've gone through in the last 4 years, really going all the way back to when climate change became a huge deal, it was to reset the global economic status and situation to where now you're going to have a cabal of people who are going to control it and run it.
Well, so we do have one question from a member of our audience, and they decided to say, is this from Chloe? It's from Chloe. How do you pronounce your last name, Mike? Spilotro?
Yes. Spilotro. Hello,
Chloe.
Chloe.
Spilotro. She says, joining a little late, what are the numbers on undecided voters? What percentage / how many people are undecided at this point?
There's 17 undecided voters in the entire nation.
Yeah,
they're all out, and they're under a rock or in a coma. Those are the two undecideds.
Yeah. Who is undecided anymore?
I honestly do believe that there's undecided voters, because I do believe that there are people who, again, like we just went through, that don't like Donald Trump for the way he carries himself. But they sit there and say, but pre-COVID, I mean, my job was good. The economy was doing well. Like every other metric by which we measure ourselves, assuming no media, assuming you never turned on a TV, you didn't know what was going on in the world, everything looks rosy.
Yeah.
So, and then you have the people that were maybe leaning Trump, but just saying, Biden's been around. He's a stable factor. I kind of know what I'm getting. And those people now are seeing that Kamala Harris is actually going to be the one, right, who's going to take over.
Right.
And I do think you have, I'd say probably 5% of the not Republican, not just people in the middle who are undecided. And that's why I think you'll see a tight, that's why polls tighten every time. I mean, going into 2016, you had people who hated Hillary Clinton. You had people who hated Donald Trump, right? But yet the independents is what swung those polls dramatically at the very end. So I do think you have undecided voters. What percentage of them they are, I don't know. I mean, you're seeing in Ohio, for example, of all the ballots that have come back, 48% have been Republican, only 39% have been Democrat, but you have 13% who are unaffiliated. So you have a very large number of unaffiliated and independent voters in Ohio who are going to swing the election, because a 9-point gap is huge. I mean, if he holds a 9-point gap, he clearly wins Ohio. And I think he will win Ohio, because you don't really see Biden campaigning there, doing any ads really in Ohio now. You did have Kamala Harris go out to the polling place in Cleveland and try to get everybody who was in the poll, in line to vote, right? As she was within 100 yards. So what she did was illegal, right? Electioneering. But I do think you have a large percentage or not a large, but a small percentage. But I think you will see a large swing in the polls, because those independents will start breaking.
And we have 50% of voters saying that they're better off now than they were 4 years ago. And this
52%
of a pandemic. Oh, it's
Right.
52. It's not 56.
Or it's 56. 56.
Oh,
Yeah.
56% say they're better off than they were 4 years ago.
Right.
And that's during this COVID crisis.
And that's the largest number since they've been doing the poll, right? Obama at this time had a 50% and he won. Nobody's ever been over 50% lost of an incumbent coming in. So that will be another interesting metric. So,
Right.
And once again, if you look at the Real Clear Politics poll aggregate of people's approval of the economy,
Right.
Trump of the economy, he's still sitting at over 50% in these troubling
Yes.
economic times that a lot of people are going through. So
right.
I think people are hopeful that once we get a coronavirus vaccine out there, things will return back to normal and we can get on board with helping rebuild the economy that we had pre-COVID,
Right.
while also trying to implement a stronger economy, a more stable economy that isn't reliant on these incredibly long and complicated global supply chains that we were relying on in the past.
Right.
Well, we
Yep.
should do another podcast on vaccines, mandatory or not, because I know a lot of people will say, look, if there's a vaccine, I'm not taking it. I mean,
Right.
you just, we've had enough conspiracies out there through the course of this pandemic that people are going, I don't know that there's not some nefarious intent with this vaccine. And I feel relatively safe from this virus. And it looks like a lot of these virus cases are actually the flu because there's no flu cases coming in. And
Right. Flu's down 98% across the world. 98%. I mean, just
Come on.
Yeah, connect the dots on that one.
If there was one thing that could come out of this laptop, if there was something in there that showed some knowledge of this CV19 release, if there was anything that showed any coordination on that front between China, then that actually would change the election. I don't think people are diving deep enough into it. I'm not saying that that's out there.
Right.
If something like that was able to be ascertained from this laptop, that would most certainly change people's
absolutely
ideas of what we're up against.
Right. And just quickly too on New Mexico, from what I'm hearing, New Mexico is now starting to move towards Trump. Not saying he's going to win it, but you're starting to see a large swing move towards Trump in New Mexico because a lot of people don't know that they're a huge energy country or state.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the, eliminating fossil fuels, that's a huge hit to southern New Mexico. So you're seeing now where some guys are saying New Mexico could be in play. We'll know more by Saturday, they said, on early voting coming in. But I think it's narrowed from I think it was 11 points or whatever for Biden down to 6 just since Thursday night.
And you're seeing more Native American groups endorse Trump.
Right.
Why change your horse midstream?
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I think I think we're in for a strong finish and an interesting finish. I still believe that love will always win over hate. And if you're counting on a group of people to go in to a voting booth because they hate the other person, you will have more people that show up who love the person they're voting for. That person wins. And I just think there's no enthusiasm for Joe Biden. You don't see it out there. And maybe everybody is completely afraid that they're going to die, and so they're mailing in all their ballots. That very well could be the case.
Yeah.
But if we've got 62, I think either 62 or 67 million I saw today was how many early votes we've got so far. I think we were at 100 and what was it? You probably know we were 127 million, I think, in 2016 that voted, and they're saying that we should be up about 20 to 30 million this year. So if we get up to 150 plus million and you've only had less than half the electorate vote, I do think you have a huge still outset that people could break and start going and seeing what's going on in these laptops or whatever and break for Trump. And again, you and I have talked about it before, is we've seen a large number, and we see them in rallies all the time. The Blexit, the Lexit, right? The walk away campaign. You've seen tons of those all over the country. I have not seen, I got two data points. I have not seen any walk away from Republican parades and anywhere, whether it be in California, whether it be in Georgia or whatever. So if you're seeing most of these people breaking from the Democrats and going to the Republican side, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to vote for Trump, but are they going to vote for their local representative as a Republican or their senator as a Republican? So you got that going, because I don't see it happening from the vice versa. I don't see many people on the right going to the left. especially in the parades and stuff we see on social media. And two, I see a tremendous amount of faith-based parades, faith-based gatherings for the Republican side, right? For the GOP or for the Trump side. I don't see faith-based gatherings and prayers going on the left. Now, is that because the right seems to be more religious? Possibly. But if you're getting into where you're seeing, I did a friend of mine is from Ghana. He just sent me a video today from Ghana. I mean, there is a large group of Ghanans going through the streets over there with support Trump signs, and they're doing a big prayer, right? I mean, if the world is all of a sudden saying, we're going to pray for Donald Trump, if you're not religious, I understand, but it's hard to get over if all this positive energy is going into one candidate and all the negative energy is going for another candidate. The positive always wins. So those are my 2 data points that I'll end on.
I like it. I like it, guys. All right. Well, we thought there'd be a little bit more breaking news today, but we'll keep looking on the polls, and then we're going to also pop in with whatever else comes out. I don't think the October surprises are over. I think this Halloween,
not in the slightest.
Well, whatever happens with the Tucker Carlson interview tonight,
that's going to be
Tony Bobulinski. I mean, that we'll probably be talking about that tomorrow.
Yeah, or tonight.
Either or.
Or tonight. Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for joining us. Please share with
Mike.
your friends.
Thanks, Bryce. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.